Story 1. I ran into him at a bar in the city outside our hometown. He was actually kind of happy and surprised to see me, and I was too because it was someone from home. We exchanged pleasantries, and I remembered the trouble he put me through. I punched him hard in the arm and said, "You made me cry in front of everyone in gym class." He replied, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And we spent the rest of the night drinking together. Story 2. Nothing, same as when I bumped into that person at a party. He attempted to talk to me, but I just walked off as if I hadn't heard anything. I wasn't going to make a scene, though. A friend asked why I ignored him, so I proceeded to tell him all the things this guy did. I didn't see him at any parties after that. Story 3. One person is in prison for life for attempting to harm her own family. If I could speak to her now, I would say, "I'm sorry your childhood was taken from you and that your life was not better than it could have been." Story 4. I had several experiences, but one of the main ones is now focused on mental health. Take all that information about mental health down. I remember everything you did to me. Story 5. We met several years ago at a mutual friend's gathering by the river. I had a portable chess set that I set up wherever I go. He was the first to come over. Apparently, he had become really interested in chess. While playing, he asked, "Was I ever unkind to you in high school?" I smiled and told him that he could be difficult at times. I shared a couple of examples he had no memory of. He apologized, and we had a good conversation. He had a troubled childhood, and I had no idea how severe it was. We made amends, and I took beating him repeatedly at chess as fair compensation. In adulthood, he seemed to replace bullying with alcoholism. He took his own life a few months later. Rest in peace. I'm glad we had that conversation and cleared the air. Story 6. 20 years later, I actually spoke to one of my main bullies. I asked him why he treated me so poorly. He revealed that he was being bullied himself in the locker room and at home by his abusive father. I also had a violent father, but he didn't know that. He apologized, but I never spoke to him again. Story 7. You made fun of me for having long hair, wearing skinny jeans, and wanting to be in a band. I still have long hair, wear skinny jeans, and play in a band known around our hometown. Thank you for buying tickets to my show. Story 8. I would walk away. They took enough from me, and I'm not giving them another minute of my time. I have nothing to say to them. I don't hate them. I'm apathetic towards them. Rich, poor, happy, sad, dead, or alive. Zero concern given. Why waste any more mental or emotional energy on people from the past who cannot change what has been done and mean nothing to me? Story 9. There was a bullying hierarchy in my middle school. I was bullied, and in turn, I bullied others. I grew out of it by high school and then, in my late teens, really leaned into spiritual development. We were probably 21 when it happened. I was working a temporary job at the county fair operating one of the rides. The county fair was a big event, so pretty much everyone in my hometown attended. The ride I was assigned to operate was popular, so I ran into quite a few people I knew from school. When I saw Ira in line, I yelled his name, and when he finally recognized me, I waved him to the front of the line. "Hey man, nice to see you. I have to say I'm sorry. I was a real jerk in middle school and picked on you a lot, and you didn't deserve that. I'm truly sorry." He appreciated it. He and his friends got to jump the line that time and then ride for free as much as he wanted the rest of the night. Story 10. I was at a party and saw a guy pull up in a fancy new two-door sports car. I recognized him as someone who had bullied me and others terribly in high school years before. He didn't recognize me, which I was happy about as I wanted no interaction with him. He went inside, and I noticed that his passenger side window was down about an inch. As I really needed to use the restroom, I thought it was a good opportunity. In a way, I did say something to him. Story 11. I would ignore them. Ignoring is like denying their value. Attacking implies they still have value to you. Story 12. Why do you know how you have affected my life? The damage you caused was all for a laugh with your friends. Was it worth it? Story 13. I would ask them if they still dared me to hit them now that there were no friends or teachers to hide behind and I have gotten a lot bigger. I have no criminal record and enough strength to knock some teeth out or break a nose, So what is a night in jail and a fine? Story 14. I was bullied from elementary through high school. After high school, I focused on myself, built my own business, met the love of my life, got married, and bought a home. We have two beautiful children. If the people who bullied me back then saw me now, they would be humbled. I have encountered a few of them, and they all treat me very differently now. Story 15. Nothing is worth my time. I couldn't even pick them out in a crowd anymore since I am 36 now, so it has been a while since high school. If I have learned anything to be true in my time on this planet, it is that people always get what they deserve. Poor behavior will eventually lead to poor results. Not a single person who has wronged me in my life is doing better than I am. Thus, I focus on my life, my goals, and enjoy it. Story 16. I had an old bully ask me out a few years ago. I asked him directly if he remembered all the times he told me to harm myself. He did not remember, but I certainly do. Story 17. My high school bullies became a successful lawyer, a successful Air Force officer, and a successful mechanic who owns several shops across 3 states. I guess they grew up and got their lives together. It doesn't matter how things turned out or if those individuals would change anything. Story 18. I later discovered that he was being abused by his alcoholic father, which likely evoked more sympathy in me than hurtful words. Pain tends to attach itself like a virus, and I refuse to be a carrier. Story 19. Well, one of them is marrying my best friend. Turned out to be a pretty good guy. People given 20 years to grow and change often are different. Story 20. How about that beer you owe me? At our 25th reunion, he walked up to me and apologized for being unkind to my best friend and me. He said he had a lot going on with his dad and took it out on the wrong people. I told him we were fine because we were just kids trying to figure things out with whatever cards we were dealt. The next day, I received a message on Facebook reiterating the apology and suggesting we grab a beer sometime. It feels almost like a movie cliché, but it's completely real. While I forgot about high school events a year or two after graduation, it was nice of him to remind me that we all grow up. I'm not the same person I was back then, and neither is he. Story 21. I feel bad about saying some words that led to others getting into trouble for typing them out. The school system was the bully in that case, and there is no way it would have changed its opinion. Story 22. I was beaten badly by a guy who was about twice my weight. He accused me of hitting on his girlfriend. I was so scared that I bit his shoulder. He then kicked me in the back of the head multiple times. I don't remember exactly how many. 20 years later, I moved into a new neighborhood and was talking to a neighbor. I found out that the guy was a drummer at his church. I had been plagued with chronic neck pain for years. I reached out to him on social media and apologized for my part, telling him that I was glad he found God. He apologized for his part, and I learned that he married his girlfriend who was battling some illness. The next day, my neck pain was gone. It lasted 15 years until I crashed my mountain bike at the age of 53. Back to square one. Maybe I need to forgive my bike? Story 23. I ran into him at a bar. It was one of those moments when he was right behind me. Someone told me they saw him that night and that he lost all use of his right arm because he was driving a quad while intoxicated. He crashed with a girl riding on the back, killed her, and lost use of his arm. A young man with a bright future got him out of jail. I laughed and said pretty loudly, "Looks like some karma finally caught up with him. I hope it makes him feel guilty for all the terrible things he did." Then, behind me, I heard, "Hey man, I was just coming over here to apologize." Well, you heard what I said. You should be in jail. You got off lucky. That was incredibly cathartic. He said nothing and just sheepishly walked away. Some people don't deserve to say they're sorry. Story 24. Why would I acknowledge their existence in the first place? I would not say anything. I would avoid them. Story 25. It depends on which one. For most, I would say I have moved past it, but for one or two, it would be a fight on sight. Story 26. I was never bullied in high school, but if it had been my elementary school bully, I wouldn't say much while standing up to him. Story 27. It depends on the bully. Some bullies have experienced their own trauma, so I likely wouldn't say anything at all. The truly abusive bullies who go on to live happy lives. I can't think of anything I could say without risking my account. One of them has a food truck, and I hope for a grease fire every single day. Story 28. I saw my grade school bully at my 20th high school reunion. We have gone out to dinner with our wives twice since then and plan on a third. Story 29. Where is your father's money now? Did you spend it all on that plastic surgery that looks like it was done in a hidden shop? Story 30. They do not care about what they did to me, and nothing I could possibly say would change that. You cannot convince someone to care about you. Story 31. I hear you were arrested twice for stealing from the businesses you worked for. I guess those good looks didn't get you anywhere. Story 32. I bumped into someone a couple of years ago at a party. I was shocked that we both knew the host, as it was in a different city. I just smiled at her and continued with the night. I didn't want to mention how much they hurt me or cause drama at the party, so I simply asked how her life was and went on with the night. Story 33. I'm not surprised you ended up in jail for hitting a man's skull with a golf club in a bar's parking lot. Story 34. I don't know. I was on both sides throughout my time in school. One guy came up to me years later at a party and apologized. I gave him a long stare for about 10 seconds and then walked away. I was drunk, so maybe I would have reacted differently otherwise. Interestingly, the exact same thing happened the following year at the same party with the same guy. I think most bullies regret the hurtful things they did as kids or teenagers, because I certainly do. I believe I would forgive most of them today, but I could never truly forget what they put me through. I wouldn't expect anything more from the people I put through this. Story 35. I apologize for the behavior of the football coach. It seems you may have felt insecure, which led you and your group to insult those of us who are different. Your anger seems to stem from disappointments with adults in your life. I understand now, and I forgive you. Story 36. My elementary school bully developed a strange attachment to me and, after a while, seemed to see me as a little brother figure. He became oddly protective. He would still tease me, but if anyone else tried to, he would immediately shut it down. Story 37. Nothing whatsoever. I doubt they remember. I am happy to quietly vanish from their memory like they will one day from mine. Story 38. I smiled when I found out you gained weight and started losing your sight. That person and his friend made 7th grade difficult for me. I attended a high school that included grades 7 through 12, so being bullied by 2 seniors was terrifying. They severely impacted my self-esteem, and one day a 9th grader stood up for me. They left me alone after that, but when I heard the news about the person losing his sight, I laughed. I saw him walking down the street once and wanted to honk and throw a water bottle at him. Not that he would be able to see it was me. I felt tears in my eyes and just kept driving. I hoped he tripped. Story 39. My brother was a bully, and I would have anger outbursts when I was fed up with him, which left him with 3 stitch marks on his head. I keep minimal contact with my family. I care about my parents and my grandmother, but that's it. The last time I went home was good for a short while, but then I regretted being there as everything got bad again. My mom tried everything to keep me happy at home because she knew it might be the last time. To all my bullies throughout my life, including my brother, I would say nothing. I remind myself that life has a way of tormenting its subjects, and I let it take its course. They are just another person passing by, someone I do not care about. Story 40. Nothing really. At some point, I realized that people who bullied often had their own problems that were worse than what they inflicted on me. Or, at best, maybe they were just too immature to realize what they were doing. Either way, I'm not going to be able to solve whatever problems they had. So, if they apologize, I'll accept it. If they don't, I'll wish them well anyway, and part of wishing them well is hoping they become better people. As for me, I'm busy with my own life. I'll admit, though, that getting to this point took some time. Story 41. I remember high school as a hierarchy of bullies. Everyone was both bullied and a bully themselves, except for the last kid at the bottom. I wasn't that kid, so I can't tell you what I would say, but I do feel like a jerk for the times I bullied people. I would apologize to them right now if I could. Story 42. Nothing at all. The girl I had a crush on and confessed to revealed my feelings to the entire ninth grade girls' gym class. From then on, she and her friends made fun of me and my friends. We ended up on the same softball team that year, and again in our senior year. I wish her nothing bad, but nothing good either. Hopefully, she has grown since then. Story 43. I thought you were referring to middle school and high school. However, now that I think about it, the question still remains. Which one? If it's Noah G, let me grab a sock with some oranges. I just want to talk. Story 44. I apologize for his circumstances. While he was awful, I don't blame him and I forgive him. I had a great upbringing and couldn't imagine the suffering he endured. It wasn't until later in life that I realized he, his mother, and his sisters were abused physically and sexually by his father. I condemn his father and the damage he caused. Story 45. I was the bully. After joining the Navy and returning, I reached out to a few people I had been especially harsh towards. I was never a physical bully. I just talked a lot, but I would take things too far occasionally. I contacted them through social media or mutual friends and apologized for everything I had done because I was immature. Almost 20 years after high school, we are on good terms for the most part. Story 46. I would probably just ask him, why did you hit me in my side with a bat after school in 3rd grade? That was really disappointing. Honestly, I don't even know if that person is alive, but I hope he is doing well. He didn't bully me all the time. He just randomly hurt me that one time. I think his home life was not great. Story 47. I ran into her when I visited my home country for Christmas last year. I had heard she was a single mother raising 10 children by herself. All I could say to her was, I hope you have had your tubes tied by now because you have a full house. Story 48. One of them continues to harass me and some of my family online, so I guess I could say something to her eventually. I have never responded to the messages. Aside from blocking her accounts and removing fake reviews she constantly posts for my business and my dad's workplace. Once, I contacted the police because she wouldn't stop calling my grandmother's phone to scream at her during the last few months of her life. However, the police didn't do much about it, and I still don't know how she got my grandmother's phone number. It is strange that she has maintained the harassment campaign for around 15 years, even though I have never directly replied. I assume that if I do respond, it will escalate even more. If I weren't worried about accidentally encouraging her, I would ask what is wrong with her, because I have been trying to figure it out for years and still haven't made any progress. My only working theory is that she has a major personality disorder, but I don't know which one. My other main bully is in prison now for a serious crime. I am not shocked. Story 49. It would be difficult since he overdosed right after high school. I laughed when I heard the news. His brother was really cool and home life seemed okay. I have no idea why he was unpleasant. Story 50. They are actually one of my best friends now and legitimately the only person from high school I have kept in contact with after graduating. Sure, bullying has its issues and I won't deny that. However, it also teaches the important life lesson that sometimes you are going to encounter difficult people in the world, and there may not be anything you can do to get rid of them. You have to learn to live with them and not let their negativity ruin your life because at the end of the day, words are just that, words. I can honestly say I have thicker skin and can handle being around some of the most difficult people in the world because of the strength my high school bully ultimately gave me. I am not saying that we shouldn't do anything about bullying because I acknowledge that there are kids who tragically take their own lives over the hurtful things their bullies may say to them. However, I am a better person than I would have been because I was bullied. If I hadn't been bullied, I would probably be like many people who let the opinions of a total stranger on the internet ruin their entire day. One must learn to let it all roll off their back and keep on living life. I wouldn't trade my high school bully for anything. Story 51. I confronted my high school bullies years ago. I attended a reunion event specifically because I was hungry that day. I treated them as children, which felt quite satisfying. I told them I was leaving the state because I received a full scholarship to a top engineering school for a pre-med and pre-law biochemical engineering degree. Additionally, I got accepted to a law school in New York along with 11 other major colleges I applied to. Honestly, I worried I might be the malicious person there because I enjoyed mocking the same kids who used to talk about my family being poor. Story 52. Honestly, nothing. We were kids back then. Kids make mistakes, and everyone did things as a child that they regret. I personally experienced both sides. I was bullied a lot and later became a bit of a bully myself. The only parts one regret are the times when I was the bully. I would much rather have the chance to apologize to the kids I picked on than confront the ones who picked on me. I am not the same person I was back then, so I can't assume they are either. That being said, there was a teacher who bullied me in 4th grade because I was a bit of a weirdo. He would call me names or make jokes at my expense and laugh with the class. 2 years later, I moved to a different school, and in high school, I was a completely different person. This same teacher got a job as an assistant football coach at my new school, and he remembered me and did the exact same thing. He would say things like, "Anyone who lets my name beat them in this play is off the team." I ended up quitting before the season even started. This man was an adult, so I can't forgive him. Mr. Short, if you're somehow reading this, I would love to see you now. Story 53. This guy bullied me in high school. He was a fairly big guy for 15. I was a senior, about 5 feet tall and weighing around 100 pounds. Fast forward about 4 to 5 years. I became bigger and somewhat of a legend in my town for some of the things I did. I saw him at the park with a couple of girls and was initially worried, but I was surprised by his reaction. He seemed frightened at the sight of me. We spoke for a few minutes, and then I went on my way. I never saw him again. Story 54. What was so wrong in your life? I actually slammed one of my bullies against the wall when he made a comment to me, with only myself, him, and his little sidekick present. I told him, "Carry this on and I will hurt you when no one is watching." They actually stopped bullying me and would give me a nod when we passed or say, "I will hurt you," and laugh. The boy I slammed against the wall was named Damien, and bless him, he used to stand up for me if someone insulted me within his hearing. I actually wish I could thank him. Story 55. I ran into him a little over a year after we graduated from high school in the town where he was attending college and I was stationed. He ended up swinging at me. I dodged and knocked him down in the middle of the street. I hadn't thought about that in over 20 years. Story 56. Hi. Then I would leave, chuckling at the idea that he would need to walk hundreds of miles home after I moved away from our hometown. Story 57. I attended a Catholic school, and our religion teacher, a priest, called me stupid in front of the entire class because I could not answer a question he asked about a Bible verse. This occurred the week after I was diagnosed with attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder, so it impacted me significantly. Now I work in education, and if I ever see him again, I would tell him my life goal is to be the teacher he never was, one who is kind, supportive, and genuinely cares about students. Story 58. I would book a boxing match and confront him because I was being bullied physically for no reason. If necessary, I would ask him if he regrets his actions and consider how to proceed from there. Story 59. I ran into a former bully years later when I was getting my car checked out for brake problems. He was a mechanic. I don't think I would have even recognized him if he hadn't called me out and told me his name. There wasn't much to say. He seemed changed and was really like any other classmate. We had a short chat about my car, and that was that. What else can you say? I wasn't holding a grudge, and he had clearly turned over a new leaf. Story 60. I found out years after high school that the school bully was horribly abused by his father in every way imaginable and eventually took his own life. Although I cannot change the past, if I could go back and talk to him with what I know now, I would simply try to be his friend. I cannot imagine how alone he must have felt. Story 61. They might wonder why they behaved poorly. If they have grown as individuals, they will likely acknowledge some difficult experiences they went through, even if indirectly, and I would forgive them. Being a child can be challenging. If they haven't matured, I would still extend my forgiveness. However, I may not directly express, "I forgive you" to them. I am uncertain. I have only encountered a few former bullies after high school, and both times ended with us sharing drinks for a few hours. Story 62. Karma is real, isn't it? That's what happens when you spend years of your life treating someone poorly. Story 63. I would like a Diet Coke, and could you please make the fries small? The football star now works at a kebab shop. Story 64. He was locked up for several assault charges some time ago. No one even reacted when they found out. Story 65. Bullied by the wealthy kids in a small town, I attended a well-known university. While walking through the quad with 6 of my friends, a former bully approached me, extending his hand for a handshake. "Hey man, it's good to see you." I made eye contact, glanced at his hand, and laughed as we walked by. My friends asked who he was, and I explained that he was one of my bullies from high school. I never saw him again after that moment. Felt good at the time, and reflecting on it 20 years later, I wouldn't have handled it any differently. Story 66. I have been bullied and have also been a bully. I still feel bad about being a bully after all these years. I want to reach out and apologize, but I hesitate because it feels strange. If my bully were in front of me now, I would likely say it's okay. We were just kids. However, if they were still difficult as an adult, I would choose to distance myself and move on. Story 67. I was a skinny, awkward kid told I had a high IQ growing up. I was a good kid. One particular guy in high school always made me the butt of his jokes, demeaning me and making fun of my hair and dark skin. I endured relentless emotional bullying for 4 years and graduated in 1975. Fast forward, I found myself in college, studying martial arts, full contact fighting, using weapons, and weightlifting. I gained 30 pounds, drove fast cars, and got married. At my 20th high school reunion, there he was, sitting at my table. Took him 2 minutes to pick up where he had left off. My wife looked at me and said, "Who's this jerk?" I replied, "Whatever you do, don't try to stop me." She nodded. I got up and walked over to him, suggesting we go outside for a chat. He insulted me again, so I pushed his chair, and he fell backward, smacking his head on the floor. He was stunned. He got up with his hands out to ward me off, stating he didn't want any trouble and that he was sorry for being rude. He was obviously frightened. At that point, I felt mentally disarmed. I knew I could hurt him if I wanted to. I said to him, in front of our entire table, "If you insult me one more time, this night will not end well for you." 5 minutes later, he left with his wife, who never said a word. The table toasted me after he was gone. He was also well known to a few other people at the table. My wife looked at me and smiled. I have never seen him again. I'm glad we didn't reconcile. I still want to punch his lights out. Story 68. I had every intention of wanting to hurt them as they had hurt me all those years ago. However, when I finally saw them, they asked me if I had any loose change. They were homeless and didn't even recognize who I was. And that's when I decided life had already beaten them down enough for me to move on with my life. Story 69. A few years ago, I attended my 20-year high school reunion and began talking with one of the people who used to bully me as a child. He mentioned that he had remarried, was in a much better place, and apologized for his past behavior. He explained that his home life had been difficult and he was often angry. I replied, "I'm glad you're doing much better. You were quite unpleasant back then." I then tapped my glass of whiskey against his drink while he reacted to my bluntness, and I walked away with my friend. I support people becoming better versions of themselves. I can even be proud of their journey. However, if you take the opportunity to apologize, please understand that I will take the opportunity to let you know how you behaved. That's part of my journey. Standing up for myself now for all the times I didn't as a child. Story 70. Well, one of my bullies is now one of my best friends. We reconnected when I was coming out of my divorce, and he reached out when he was just starting his. So I guess if I had him in front of me right now, I'd say, "Hey, why aren't you back in Scotland with your girlfriend? Did you bring me something back?" So anyway, I went on a date. Story 71. Nothing important. They were children. I learned a lot about myself from how I interacted with them. I hope they grew into good men. Story 72. I would ask if, after all these years and with all the awareness raised, they realize the ongoing, long-term, never-ending damage they caused, and if they know that their actions affected much of my life and the person I became. I feel so sorry for children who are going through this right now. I wish I had a magic wand. So cruel. Story 73. I bumped into someone while grocery shopping and asked if there were any more potatoes in the back. He looked like he had a rough time in the last 20 years. I'm glad he is employed and hope he is doing better now. Story 74. Someone who bullied me in high school reached out to apologize. To be honest, I moved on years ago, but it was clear that it weighed on him, so I forgave him. Story 75. I found out that one of my bullies died in a drunk driving accident and another died of a drug overdose. I wish them the worst in the afterlife. Story 76. If they tried to initiate a conversation, I would say sorry, I'm busy, whether I am looking at my phone or doing nothing. I am over it and don't need to speak to them or really care about what they have been up to. Story 77. Nothing. I had a major glow-up after high school. They don't deserve anything I have to offer. They never did and never will. Story 78. I'm sorry you grew up with so much homophobia. I know you were deeply in the closet and felt jealous. I was seeing a guy in his friend group. He was really angry. Looking back, I feel bad, as parents of that generation were often inconsistent in supporting their children, regardless of who they are. I hope he eventually worked things out with himself. I don't know. Story 79. What did you say your name was? It doesn't sound familiar. I have a terrible memory for names and faces. What do you remember about us at school? Maybe that will help jog my memory. Then I would just continue to not remember them. Story 80. I got drunk one night and messaged my friend exactly what I thought and how I hope they look back on those years with shame and regret. I was slightly embarrassed the next day, but it felt good to get it off my chest. Story 81. Never. If you picture it, he died in high school. Suppose it survives, and if it is encountered again, it dies again as usual. Story 82. I ran into him years later after moving from my hometown to the big city. Apparently, he had to move at some point too. While hiking in a nature area, I saw him there. He went from a jock and gangsta type with a buzz cut to someone resembling a hippie with dreadlocks. We said hi and caught up, and he apologized for his past behavior on his own. He's a different person for sure. I haven't seen him since. Story 83. Why would I waste my breath talking to them? From 5th grade to graduating high school, they made sure I knew every day that I was worthless, that I should end my life. They traumatized me to the point that I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I tried to walk into the entrance of the high school to visit a craft sale and had a panic attack from the flashbacks. To hell with all of them, former students and teachers alike. Story 84. She asked to meet so that she could apologize. We are in our 30s now. I expressed my feelings and told her how much her behavior impacted my life and made things difficult. She apologized and genuinely wanted to spend time with me to understand how her actions caused suffering. It truly was the best outcome for what happened in high school and college. We had an adult conversation and I forgave her. We are friendly now. Story 85. I would say nothing because it is a no-win situation for me. Regardless of whether they matured or not, I do not want to give them the satisfaction of forgiveness or the satisfaction of knowing they bothered me as much as they did. Story 86. I actually had this happen. He approached me, bought me a beer at the bar we were at, and apologized profusely. I kept telling him it was fine because I moved out of the town shortly after high school and kind of forgot about him. It turns out that he had a bigger problem forgiving himself than I had forgiving him. We talked a bit, but his guilt was making me uncomfortable. So I just left and hung out with my friends. Honestly, it was an after party to a friend's wedding, so I wasn't really focused on people who hadn't been at the wedding. Story 87. I ran into one of them the last time I visited my hometown at a bar. He mentioned that I have changed a lot, but he is definitely sorry for everything he put me through in high school. He has also changed significantly since becoming a father. After high school, he joined the military, served a tour in Iraq, returned home, attempted college, but it did not work out. He met his now wife while attending college and ultimately took over his father's old mechanic business. He is now a town mechanic. Interestingly, I encountered one of the people I used to think was cool while I was in high school at the bar that night as well. However, without the rose-tinted glasses of high school, I realized he was quite unpleasant to me back then, and he still acted the same way as an adult. Now, he is being a bit creepy, pursuing women in the bar who are in their early 20s while he is in his mid-30s. Story 88. You dated my best friend, turned her against me, threatened to hurt me if I ever talked to her again, and made me scared to approach anyone in a social setting for a long time. I hope your relationship with her fell apart just like your actions caused my friendship with her to. Give me one reason why I should forgive you. It's unfortunate this question specified high school. If it had mentioned elementary school, I would have a lot more to say. Story 89. He apologized to me and showed significant improvement in behavior, so I would probably just say hello and move on. Story 90. Considering I haven't met some of them in close to 10 years, I'd love to catch up and ask where they are now while reminiscing about the good old times. They were my friends as well. Story 91. Honestly, I would probably just thank them. Not because they were right. They were terrible individuals, but because dealing with them taught me how to quickly identify manipulative and insecure people. Additionally, watching them peak in high school while I got my life together has been the most satisfying form of revenge imaginable. One person is divorced twice, working at the same gas station where he used to hang out, and still posts cryptic, some people fake success, memes on social media as if it's 2010. So yes, thanks, I suppose. You were difficult, but you served a purpose. Story 92. You were a bully. How on earth do you have a family and I don't? Bullies don't deserve a family after the harm they cause, like you did. Story 93. I have met a few of my bullies in random encounters decades later. It was strange because they were once my friends. It wasn't until I talked with them and reminisced about old times that I realized how horrible they were to me. Bully. That was so funny. I can't believe you let us do that. Me? Yeah. Story 94. I had the opportunity to speak to two of them. One mentioned they didn't realize how they treated me. The other reached out unexpectedly and apologized for her terrible behavior towards me in school, expressing that she couldn't move on with her life until she did. She was difficult for me. Honestly, I don't think I would respond because it wouldn't matter anymore. People like that often live in denial, and their opinions don't pay my bills. It must be miserable to feel the need to be mean to others to feel better about oneself. Story 95. His wife died from cancer last year. I think I need to tell him how sorry I am to hear that news. Story 96. There is not much to say. The majority are underemployed, earning a meager salary and paying pensions. Some whom I followed into addiction were affected. Life has already been spoken. Story 97. I offer my congratulations for their ability to predict my outcome as a failure and an unremarkable individual. Story 98. I joked that I would tell them to put the fries in the bag, but honestly, I have nothing to say to them. As painful as it was, I successfully moved on. There is no need to go back. I know one is in prison and one died of an overdose. I am not sure about the others. Story 99. Hi. Who cares? I've been on both sides. If it still holds you back or affects your life after a few years, seek therapy and move on. Story 100. I was beaten and punched by a kid who was a couple of years older than me and weighed double. I didn't know him, but I recognized the other kids he was with, and they claimed I had talked about him to entertain themselves at my expense. In fact, I had never seen him before in my life. I wasn't just bullied. I was assaulted, and he was not satisfied with doing it only once. It happened several times over a couple of years. So I have strong feelings about it. I'm not sure what I would do. Follow him to find out where he lives or just let it go. But one thing is certain. I won't forgive him. Story 101. I'm definitely the outlier. The bullies were the ones afraid of me. I'd probably apologize for beating them hard enough that they cried. Prefaced by, I still think you're an unkind person, but I was smaller than them, but I grew up on a farm and practiced taekwondo. I also had a strong temperament and ran faster than they did. Story 102. I think I would just smirk and walk away. The best revenge is living your best life and letting naysayers fall to the wayside. Story 103. Nothing. What is the point? Probably hello. The worst offender was a young girl, a cheerleader with the perfect boyfriend and the world in front of her. She chose to act poorly instead. Last I heard, within 5 years of high school, she had 3 children with 2 different fathers. Her parents kicked her out for her bad choices, and she was hit by a car and broke both legs while walking to a fast food restaurant at 2 a.m. in a pedestrian-free area. If I had seen her then, I wouldn't have said anything. If I saw her now, I certainly wouldn't. What exactly would be the point? For me to bully her in retaliation or be cruel because she was cruel to me long ago. That's it. I would say, hello. Nothing more. I'm not interested in how she's doing, what she's doing, or who she's with. I'm not interested in her life now any more than I was then. But I would acknowledge her. Because at the end of the day, one truth remains the same. I am who I am. I will continue to be who I am, and no one else is going to change me or make me act against my own nature because they acted poorly 25 years ago. Story 104. I forgive you. I understand that your father's alcoholism and abuse influenced your behavior, and I recognize that I became your outlet for the pain you were experiencing. Story 105. I hope your child one day experiences what I experienced. Actually, I wouldn't wish that, but I say it to help him understand how difficult it was to be bullied by him. Story 106. Thank you for not pouring that water on my head when your friends told you to do it that one time, even though you did it to someone else later. I noticed. Story 107. To the worst one? Well, I wouldn't know. He would probably burst into tears the moment he saw me and realized how content and at peace I am being my true self. Back in high school ages ago, he would bully me every day, hoping I would take my own life. He would constantly yell that I would never know love and that I would die unloved. His friends would join in the mockery and laugh or yell at me too. I cried a lot and seriously considered suicide until one day, I just got sick of feeling sad and felt total fiery rage instead. I sat in my bedroom and calmly said to God, or whatever supernatural power you may believe in, that I truly, wholly cursed my bully to suffer the fate he wished upon me. About 20 years later, I had grown so much as a person and completely forgotten about that bully and my silly curse on him. That is, until a high school classmate I ran into told me his life story after we all graduated. The poor man fell in love with a woman during college, but she was, by all accounts, a monstrous woman who hated him and bullied him all the time. She only became his girlfriend because she couldn't find anyone better at the time. When she dumped him, all his friends and family rushed to tell him how much they disliked her and how glad they were she was gone. But then she returned because she still couldn't find anyone better. He instantly proposed to her and married her, knowing how much she still hated him and how much everyone he knew disliked her. He had 2 children with her, hoping they would chain her to his side for life. Instead, after some years, she divorced him and told him she would rather be dead than ever acknowledge him again. Today, from what my friend told me, he is an utterly miserable, lonely man who looks like a skeleton with skin. He has huge bags under his eyes. He cries all the time, even in public, like when he met up with that friend and other high school mates. Pity him so much. I can only hope he has learned to be a better, kinder person after such experiences. Story 108. He is a good friend and we had a business together. We finally resolved our differences after a confrontation, and we have been friends ever since. He was my best man at my wedding. Story 109. As soon as I graduated and walked out of the building, I stopped caring about the individuals who bullied me in high school, as I never saw them again. I do hope that my 1st and 4th grade teachers spent the last 10 years of their lives in poor nursing homes. They were the worst bullies. Story 110. I feel nothing for you, in all honesty. I was that awkward child with a stutter. I've learned to move on with my life. Story 111. Bully here, some 10 years later, we ran into each other in Germany. I told him I had been looking for him for almost 8 years to say how sorry I was and how proud I was that he had achieved a PhD, and he forgave me. Story 112. Almost every person who bullied me has since reached out, apologized, or made amends. I don't hold grudges. I was a difficult kid dealing with a challenging home life, and I can't even imagine what makes kids bully others considering what might be happening in their own homes. I grew up in a very poor town, and no one was getting bullied for being poor. Story 113. I met one of them a few years after high school. He tried to chat with me as if we were old friends. I knew exactly who he was. He looked the same, but more unpleasant. I asked, "Who are you?" and walked away. I felt like I won. Story 114. I saw her downtown where I worked one night, and she transformed from a popular mean girl to a very happy person who was delighted to see me. I told her it was nice to see her and that I hoped things were going well. I might be criticized for this, but I briefly bullied someone in high school. I don't know why. I was just mean. We ended up attending the same university, and I saw her at a party and apologized in tears. She was cool about it, and we spent a few hours drinking and promised to hang out, but we never did. She went on to be successful, but I lost track of her after a while. I'm 33 for context. All of this was a while ago. Story 115. He apologized, but he threw me through a door and knocked my front teeth out. I just said whatever. Story 116. I reached a breaking point and confronted him when we were still in high school. I broke his cheekbone. He was 2 years older and bigger, but at that moment, I was ready to take a beating if necessary. I just couldn't tolerate his behavior any longer. It turned out he wasn't much of a fighter. That was incredibly satisfying. I became well known after that incident. He had been a complete bully to everyone, and it was major news when he left school in an ambulance. To add to it, he was suspended for a week for bullying, while I received 2 detentions as the so-called victim. He never bullied anyone again and barely looked up after that. Story 117. Not really anything. I've realized long ago that it is not worth holding on to hate like that. We would probably have a normal conversation. Story 118. I would do what I always did. Find out where they lived and damage their property or steal from them. Story 119. If you had asked me when I was 25 or even 35, my response would have been different. However, now at 54, I realize that he is probably a different person now, and if he isn't, then I feel sorry for him. Story 120. I would tell all of them to leave and walk away, to be honest. I'm happier not seeing or hearing from them. I forgave them years ago, but I never forgot. Story 121. My bully apologized to me at a high school reunion. I looked at him and said, "Was that you?" very loudly. We had a good laugh. Story 122. I would kick him in the same place as hard as I could, just like he did to me in 7th grade. Forgive and forget, not a chance. Story 123. I wouldn't say anything unless she started something. I think she is relatively normal now, and I have been friends with her complete opposite younger sister for 20 years. However, if she did start something, I would let her know that when she and her husband were just boyfriend and girlfriend, I hooked up with him. Story 124. I experienced bullying more in middle school, which was 20 years ago. I don't hold any ill will toward him. If he is still difficult, that's on him, and I will excuse myself from the interaction. Story 125. I would ask them why. I was in 11th grade, and 2 black girls from my art class would bother me in the hallways. Even though I never talked to them or knew their names, they eventually left me alone. Story 126. Did you hate me? I experienced vague bullying where people would point out aspects of my appearance or how I dressed, questioning, "Why are you like this?" I had no idea what anyone meant by it. Sometimes people played mean tricks on me. It was mild compared to many experiences, but I couldn't tell if I was supposed to continue existing in their presence or if the comments were meant to drive me away. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.